as we start session 2, we're really going to look at a birthing of a message that the Father really started to show me in a very profound way. And after today, you're going to understand that from the land of Israel, this is the picture of what is being brought forth. And this is what we need to understand, what's being shown and what was done at the time of Sukkot. So when Father starts to bring a revelation, he brings physical things that happen that's going to add in to what he's showing. So when he says the end of Saul is coming to an end, the tzitzit needed to be cut, and this is what's being done. But now we're going to look at a different part of David. So we're actually going to start in 1 Chronicles chapter 13. And now understand, we go back, remember where the ark was, that the ark had been put at Obed-Edom, that where the ark had rested for more than 20 years. And you need to understand, in the time of King Saul, the ark was never sought. They didn't seek the ark. Only one time, Saul wanted to again go get the ark because he was losing a battle. And again he wanted to go get the ark. But he was stopped in his tracks and he never brought that ark. And so in the time of King Saul, the ark was never sought. They never inquired of Abba before his ark. Now you must understand, this is precious to David, because David's heart was to be able to make sure that the ark of the Father was to be returned back to Jerusalem, because by this time David is king over the whole house of Israel. He's king over the whole house of Israel. So there's nothing that David wants more than to bring the presence of the Father into the city of the king in Jerusalem. And he wanted a place to be able to put the Father's ark. So we are now going to look at David now and what happens. Because remember, that ark, when it came on the cart of the Philistines, they brought the ark. Remember, the Philistines brought the ark with their little gifts and everything, and then this ark was put in a place, and this is where it stood. And so now David is going to go, and we're going to look at the story as we're going to unfold this in 1 Chronicles 13. And David consulted the commanders of thousands and hundreds and every leader. Now understand, by this time David is the commander and the king over an entire army. And so now he consults his commanders and his leaders. And David said to all the assembly of Israel, if it seems good to you, and if it is of Yahuwah, our Lord, let us send out to our brothers everywhere who are left in all the land of Israel, and with them to the priests and the Levites who are in their cities and their open lands, and let them be gathered to us. And let us bring the ark of Yahuwah back to us, for we sought him not since the days of Saul. So you see, now he consults. Listen carefully. Does David consult Abba Yahuwah? No. He consults his commanders. He consults his leaders. They have a nice prayer meeting. Does it sound like what we do in the church? Let us have our prayer meeting. Let us bring the leadership of the prayer meeting. And let us now start planning how we're going to build the Father's church. So it's not a meeting of saying, let us go and strip ourselves before the Father. Let us humble ourselves. Let us fast. Let us pray. Let us seek his face. And let us see what it is that we're supposed to do for the Father. No. We come up with a bright idea. And then we put this idea into action. And it all seems good. This is David we're talking about. So now David is doing what he feels is right to do, to bring the Ark of the Covenant back into Jerusalem. And so we see David assembled all of Israel from Shihur and Mitzrayim as far as the entrance of Hamath to bring the Ark of Yahuwah from Yirath Yerim. And David and all Israel went up to Bala in Kirath Yerim and Yehudah to bring up from there the Ark of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah who dwells between the cherubim. Now listen carefully. Yahuwah who dwells between the cherubim, where the name is called. Now, if you need to understand one thing today, you need to understand how significant the Father's name is. That between the cherubim is where the Father's name is being called. So now to understand the restoration of what the Father is bringing in these last days is He has to restore His name. And it's important for us to understand that this is part and parcel of the sealing that's going to be done in these last days. And that is why we're going to get a little bit deeper into that tomorrow once we start to cover the place of the Holy of Holies. And so that's why the Father is adamant of being able to now bring a restoration, because He is not in the titles of the Lord and the God and all these titles that we call Him by. He's not in those titles because of the fact, yes, this is how we've been taught. I mean, people, please understand my heart. We all enter through the outer court. You understand? We're going to understand today clearly that outer court. We all come in. You come in as you are. But listen carefully. That which you get away with in the outer court will kill you in the Holy of Holies. Because you cannot come and stand before a Holy Father in the same way. And so there is a process that we are going to have to go through. And you are going to see clearly here with David that even he did not understand the protocol. And that is why we need to understand that there are many of us here that might have the heart of David, but yet we are not walking as David was walking, even though the heart is right. So we're going to look at this. And so he says, who dwells between the cherubim, where the name is called on. So between there, that's where the name of the Father is called on. And they placed the ark of Yahuwah on a new wagon from the house of Abinadab. And Uzzah and Ayahu were leading the wagon. Now, wow! Isn't that the same way that the Philistines sent the ark in? So what did he do? He went and inquired of them, how did the ark come into the land when it came in from the Philistines? And what did he find out? The ark came in an ox wagon. And this is how it was being transported, in an ox wagon. But you see, he goes one step further. Because now he thinks, wow, this is a holy ark. I'm going to put 2 men to stand before each side of the ark to protect the ark. So he gets new oxen, and he puts the oxen, and he gets his wagon, and he puts the ark on top of it. And David and all Israel were playing before Eluah with all their might, with songs and the lyres, with harps and tambourines, and with cymbals and trumpets. Now understand, he's got one heck of a procession going on over here. And he's doing it with all his heart. And he really believes that he's pleasing the Father in what he's doing with all his heart. And this is what we need to understand today. We can be that David that is really dancing before the Father, loving the Father, really believing that we are being obedient to the Father. But we are going to see what's going to happen here. And when they come to the threshing floor, take note of that. There's going to come a place in your life that you're going to come to the threshing floor. Now, what is this threshing floor? This threshing floor is done by beating the sheaves against wooden bars to separate the grain from the stalks. Now, remember how the Father's going to separate the wheat from the weeds? That he's going to have to separate. So there is a threshing floor that's going to have to come in our lives. That we are the Davids serving Abba Yahuwah, but the pattern and the way that we're doing it is still not after his heart. Because there is a way that seems right unto man, but its end leads to death, is what is written in the book of Proverbs. There is a way that seems right unto man, but its way is going to lead to death. So understand something. Yahweh is doing what he thinks is right, and understand the king is in the lead of the procession. He's got Levites, he's got priests, and he's carrying this ark on this cart. A Okay, but no, but you just want the one. No, it's fine. And he's carrying this, because they come both up. He's carrying this ark on this cart, and he's leading the procession. And now they get to a place called threshing floor, the winnowing, the beating. And the winnowing process is the removing of the unwanted husk from the grains. It is done by pouring the grain from a height on a windy day when the grain falls to the ground and the chaff is blown away. So he's going to have to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's the process of the threshing floor. So we have to go through a threshing floor. Allah, you're not just going to arrive to be your David. You're going to go through a threshing floor. Because he's got to bring that purity out of you. Because the pure heart is there. But the walk is not lining up with the purity of the heart that is there. Because at the end of the day, as far as David is concerned, he's doing what he feels the Father wants him to do. So now look what happens. And when they come to the threshing floor of Kidon, Uzzah put out his hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. So imagine, at the threshing floor, the oxen stumbles, the ark is going to lean over, and Uzzah, an innocent man, puts out his hand, and he's going to be struck dead instantly. Yo! Now all of a sudden this is what happens, and the wrath of Yahuwah burned against Uzzah, and he struck him because he put his hand on the ark, and he died there before Yahuwah. Understand, an innocent man. What has this innocent man done? All he's tried to do was protect the ark from falling, and now this innocent man has died. And David was displeased because Yahuwah had broken out against Uzzah. Therefore that place is called Peretz Uzzah until this day. And David was afraid of Yahuwah that day, saying, how shall I bring the ark of Yahuwah to me? Now you see, this is what needs to come upon the body of Messiah. The fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom. So we can be doing our big thing and carrying on about our lives. And then all of a sudden, man, you're going to be hitting the ground, and you're going to be able to hit that threshing floor. And then destruction comes in your life, and you don't understand what's going on. And quite honestly, it's not even that there's sin in your life. You're just trying to do what you think you're doing what the Father wants you to do. But you're going through such difficulties. And the reason why the difficulties are coming is because actually the Father's trying to cleanse you of that which is not really from Him. And so your heart might be in the right place, and your heart might be doing what you think He wants you to do. But this is not His will, nor His way. And so now the fear of Yahuwah comes upon David. And as the fear of Yahuwah comes upon David, David has to now go back. But understand, what does the name Uzzah mean? So you've got to come to a threshing floor, which the Father's going to bring you to a threshing floor, and Uzzah's name means strength. So guess what? He brings you to the end of your own strength. Why? Because many of us will be doing the work of the Father, but we're still operating out of our own strength. And there must be none of you and all of Him, because this is for the glory and the honor of His name. So if you are to carry His glory, how can you carry His glory when you are still getting the glory for it? When it's still all being done out of your strength? Impossible. Because He doesn't want it from you, He wants it from Him. So therefore, the fear of Yahuwah, He's going to bring us to a threshing floor, so that we can get to the end of ourselves, so that we can receive the fear of Yahuwah that becomes the wisdom that we need in order to be able to do the work that He has laid before us. His work, His way, not your work and your way. Not we have a little meeting over here, let me consult with the leaders and the elders and find out what is a good idea. And now we discuss it like a worldly meeting. That's what they do in a business worldly meeting. Let's put the reports out. Let's put all this, the brainstorming. And let's plan for the year. And now we think we bring this into the church. You've got to be joking. My ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not even your thoughts. You think and feel one way. What I do is beyond your understanding, because His way is not our way at all. And so this is now when David catches a wake up because he wants to bring the Father's presence back to Jerusalem. But all of a sudden, an innocent man has died. And at the same time, now he realizes the fear of Yahuwah is upon him, and he thinks, what has happened? He was upset with the Father. How many times do we get upset with the Father? Because he doesn't answer things the way we expect. Because he does things a little bit different to the way we would expect. And we go through such hardship and heartache. And believe me, that was this year that I've just been through, where I was crying before the Father and said, now, is this really the way that you thought I was going to come to Israel? That I've got to lay down my husband and my children, and I must come and be in the land and go without my husband and my children? This was not what I signed for. I didn't sign up for this. I was under the impression that we were all going to go as a family. But you see, this has been part of my process where I had to die, because you see, we can worship him with our lips. Oh, Father, I can't wait. Father, I just want to be me and you on that high mountain. I would just want to be me and you, just me and you, Father, that I can just be alone with you and just worship you. You're right. You can worship me with nice lips, Natalia. Let me just quickly remove the family for a little bit, and then you're going to squirm like the worm that I was squirming for a long time, crying long crocodile tears, because where is my husband? Where are my children? I didn't see my children for 7 months last year. I didn't see my husband for 4 months. And then he came to visit for 3 weeks, and then almost didn't come through customs in Israel because they interrogated him. You want to see me hit that floor and say, now what? Now what? But you see, this is part of the process that he's got to take you through, because you pray dangerous prayers. Hello? You pray the dangerous prayers. And then he wants to answer your dangerous prayer, but you don't like the way the dangerous prayer is being answered, because he wants to answer the cry of your heart. But the way he answers it is not always the way you would expect him to answer, because he's got to expose the wickedness that's really there, to be able to raise you up to be everything that he created you to be. So we can really worship him and really cry out to him in nice, bold words. But when the threshing floor comes in our life, where we've got to come to the end of our strength, and he's got to start to sift us, throwing us up in the air like this, and we're banging on that floor. Sure, it's not easy. But he's trying to answer your prayer. He wants to give you your desire that you desire. He's put that desire in you. And he wants you to carry his glory. Just like David. But David was trying to do it in his own strength. And so here we see how all of a sudden David gets to the place of where now he's got the fear of the Father. And 3 months later, 3 months, we will read now from 1 Chronicles 15, 1 to 27, it says, and he built houses for himself in the city of David. So it's 1 Chronicles 15 from verse 1. And he built houses for himself in the city of David. And he prepared a place for the ark of Yahuwah and pitched a tent for it. And David said, no one is to lift the ark of Yahuwah but the Levites. For Yahuwah has chosen them to lift the ark of Yahuwah and to serve him forever. So you see, in those 3 months, David had to go away, and he had to go and inquire of the Father, what is the pattern that he has laid in how to carry his presence? Definitely not on a Philistine cot. Definitely not in the way that we are trying to carry the presence of the Father. You see, because we are trying to carry this presence of the Father, but we are carrying the presence of the Father in a Philistine cot. That is in the man-made customs and traditions that has been passed down to us from our ancestors for more than 2,000 years. This is how it's been. And this is how we're trying to see the Father's glory. And it's still not coming. And the little twinkle that we see here and there is really not his glory, because I tell you something now, when the glory of the Father comes into the room, I promise you, you're not going to be running around clacking like a chicken and get and all these funny things. You're going to hit the ground and you're going to start repenting, and you are going to understand his holiness. And this is why the counterfeit has been there for long enough, because I tell you something, when the glory of the Father comes into a room, you hit your face. You fall on your face and you start to repent before a holy Yah. Because he's a holy Yah. But we have made him to come into our little cart. And we have called this his glory. And we have made this the pattern. And the pattern is coming from the world. And the pattern is not coming from the word. So how dare we go and build our own pattern? Because I'll tell you now what has happened in the land of Israel at the time of Sukkot, for you to understand. This is exactly what the church has been doing. Especially the body of Christ that is out there is trying to form a pattern, but they have veered away from the truth of what this word says. And so you see, all along, let's just read. We continue to read, and it says, and he gathered the children of Aaron and the Levites, and David assembled all of Israel at Jerusalem to bring up the ark of Yahuwah to its place, which he had prepared for it. And David gathered the children of Aaron and the Levites. Now we go down to verse 11. It says, and David called for Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, and for the Levites, for Uriel, and for Azariah, and for Joel, and Shemaiah, and Eliel, and Aminadab. And he said to them, you are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites. Set yourselves apart. So do you think you're just going to carry the ark of the Father's presence without setting yourself apart? Oh, I got news for you. That's impossible. Because he's a holy Yah. You might have a little twinkle of his presence within you, but you're not going to have the fullness of the glory. And the fullness of the glory that I want to see is that the greater things than he that we are called to do. Is that not what the word says? Greater things that I have done, you will do, because I go to the Father. And we are supposed to be doing the greater things. Where is the time of where the shadow was healing the sick? Where's those days? I'm crying out to the Father. I'm saying, where are those days? But you see, the Father's not going to bring it as long as it's going to be about Natalia. And the people are going to have to raise up Natalia. The Father is not going to be able to bring that, because at the end of the day, no man is going to take that glory. Because when they walked, they said, silver and gold have we none, but pick up your bat and walk. And they didn't even know who these people were, the disciples' names. They didn't even care for the disciples' names. What was important was it was in the name of Yeshua Mashiach. That was the name that they were to remember, to pick up their mat and walk. But we are not there. I mean, understand something. If this is what the disciples were doing, and they didn't even have the so-called new covenant. They didn't even have the new covenant. They only had the so-called old covenant. Wow. They had the foundation, so what are we lacking? Something is wrong. We are lacking a foundation that the Father is wanting to restore us to, because that's what they were doing in the so-called old covenant. But we will understand today that there's no such thing called an old covenant. There is a covenant that was given from the beginning. And we will understand the difference between a restored covenant and the covenant that was put in place. A covenant that was not being able to be adhered to a covenant that was going to come, that we are going to be able to do, because Messiah is the one that's going to walk us out with this covenant. It's a renewed covenant. It's a restored covenant. Because when a covenant has been made, it only gets annulled through death. So that covenant stands. And so through the death, the covenant can be renewed, can be restored, not done away with. And this is the thing that the church needs to understand. And this is now what the Father is going to be able to bring. You see, yeah, he says, set yourselves apart, you and your brothers, and then you shall bring up the ark of Yahuwah, of Elohim, to Israel, to the place I have prepared for it. Because you did not do it in the first time, verse 13, because you did not do it in the first time, Yahuwah Elohim broke out against us, because we did not ask him about the right ruling. Now there you see, he broke out against them because of what? Look in verse 13, we did not ask him for the right ruling. So what is the pattern? What is the right ruling that he has given us from the beginning? What is that right ruling that has been put there from the foundation? How do you build a house without a foundation? How? So now we only want to build a house on the New Testament with Yeshua. But what about the foundation? He came with the foundation. And he came to bring the two together as one house. He says you cannot build a house on another foundation, and you cannot build a house unless you build it on the foundation. So the foundation was everything that was given us in the Torah and the books of the prophets. That is the foundation that we have. But now we're trying to carry the ark in our own little way, in our own vehicle, of our religious vehicle that we have established for ourselves. And we are going to look at this a little bit deeper. So the priests and the Levites set themselves apart to bring up the ark of Yahuwah, of Eluah of Israel. And the children of the Levites bore the ark of Yahuwah on their shoulders and its poles, as Moshe had commanded, according to the word of Yahuwah. So the Father, now, you know what? Do you think the Father spends 30 chapters explaining about the Mishkan, explaining about the ark, explaining about every one of these furniture inside the Mishkan for our health? I would think it would be very important. Because if he spent so many chapters speaking about it, because this is a pattern that has been laid there, that this is the pattern that was from heaven, this was the pattern that was laid in heaven. Moshe saw it on the mountain, as it was in heaven, so shall it be on earth. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So they're seeing the heavenly pattern. He's seeing the heavenly pattern being manifested on the earth, but now we want to bring our own pattern and put him in it and say, now it's sharp. We'll build our Philistine cart, we put his presence in there, and this is the way we're going to carry his presence. It's not going to work. Because innocent people are going to die. Innocent people are going to die. And this is exactly what happened in Eretz Israel. I will share with you. Now, go down to verse 25. And it was David and the elders of Israel and the commanders over thousands who went to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah from the house of Obed-Edom with joy. And it came to be that when Eluah helped the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, that they slaughtered 7 bulls and 7 rams, and David was dressed, listen carefully, and David was dressed in a robe of fine linen, as were all the Levites who bore the ark, the singers, the Kenayah, the leaders of the service with the singers, and David wore a linen shoulder garment. So in the first time when David was carrying the ark, David was wearing his kingly robes. So he was dressed as the king and dancing before the ark in his kingly robe. But now, when it gets to the place of when he finally is now going to bring the ark, he strips himself of his kingly robes, and he comes and stands before the Father in his priestly robes that was made out of fine linen. Because the priests would not enter into the Mishkan unless they were wearing the fine linen. So the king strips himself. So you see, there's a stripping yourself of yourself in order to be able to allow the Father to carry his presence. And this is the thing that we need to understand. Because when it came to that Sunday night after we finished last weekend, the Father said to me very sternly, you didn't speak enough about this, Natalia. I said, oh Father, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there when it comes to clothes. Because when it comes to clothes, you're touching people in a very deep way. But you see, there's a stripping away that the Father needs to bring. Because I can tell you now, you can come as you are outside, in the outer court there. You can come as you are. But once you're going to enter into that Mishkan, you cannot come with your clothes the way you were out there. Because everything that has to do with the Mishkan is about him and his glory. You're not serving yourself anymore. You're not about your mission. You're not about yourself. You're not about the way you think you want to be before him. Just like David now. David had to strip himself. Now, understand what happens if you read if you carry on reading. When he finally brings the ark into Jerusalem, Michal, his wife, is there from the house of Saul. And she starts to laugh at him. And she starts to scold him. And she says, you have made a spectacle of yourself because you are in your underclothes. Because those linen clothes of David, he stripped himself of his kingly robes, and the clothes that he had underneath was just the linen clothes, like his undergarments of linen that he would wear underneath. And she started to make fun of him. So the house of Saul will make fun of you when you're trying to do what's right for the Father. When all of a sudden they look at you, they say, "Are you trying to be a Jew now?" And I think, huh? What are you talking about? The way you dress. Are you not trying to be this Jew? And I think, you got to be joking. It's bad enough for me to just walk in my shoes, let alone want to be like them. I don't need to be like them. Because when the Father told me that I was to cover my hair, he told me that in 2014. But when the Father changed my clothes in 2005. I had to give away about 40 pairs of jeans out the cupboard. There you go, 40 pairs of jeans. There you go, from there to there to there to there. Oh, so many different pairs of jeans out the cupboard. There they go. Bye-bye. And then he started to change the clothes some more. And he started to change the clothes some more. And now, I was just hearing, just yesterday, I was saying, I like my little frilly things. I have beautiful lacy things. I make my clothes. I mean, this I had to make for this conference. Because the Father said linen. I thought, now it's a new level. Now it's all my frilly things. I've got all my little lacy things. I mean, ask these people, I've dressed beautiful. All my little lacy, little frilly things. I've got so many. And he said, Natalia, now linen. I said, Father, no, this is a story. Because linen has to be ironed. I travel. I don't have time to go ironing linen. This is a big job. Yes, it takes a lot to have to wear this clothes. Because you see, every time that iron is going to go on these clothes, I'm going to iron out every spot and every wrinkle. That's a spot and wrinkle you need to be ironed out of your life, child. And the heat that's going to come upon you, it's going to burn, because it's going to be a walk of fire, like the bee wants to sing me. Walk of fire. Not an easy walk. No, not at all. And now I've got to take a little like kettle thing that I take this. It's a steam iron, and I've got to sit there with the steam, and I don't have time for this. I don't have the time for this. We're on the go. We're on the move. There's no time to now go sit and iron clothes. I want frilly things that I can roll up and put in my bag. And I've got this little bag, and it all fits so nicely, and all these layers. I loved it. New season. I don't like it. I'm dying 10,000 deaths in my flesh. This is not me. If you know the people that know me for long, this is not me. Because the Natalia that they know is very nice, frilly dressed. And he always says to me, the circumstances don't change the dress code. So I'm climbing a mountain and the blackjacks are sticking to the clothes because it's all frilly things. He says, I've never seen a person that's going to do an 11-kilometer walk like you with frilly things, Natalia. Lace all over and you're doing this 11-kilometer walk, going to break down altars and do whatever, but the dress code doesn't change. Just because I'm going to climb the mountain doesn't mean I'm going to put on the jeans now and I'm going to be standing and it's all these ski clothes on the top of this mountain in Mont Blanc, on the highest mountain in Europe. And it's all these people with ski clothes and now I come with frilly things. And it's minus 19 degrees. It doesn't make sense. But you see, he says, the circumstances don't change the dress code because you are dressed in a way that has to represent the king. And that's my call. I'm not saying that's your call. And I don't want to put it on you either. But that's my call. That's what I have to walk in. That's what he requires of me. And so I don't have an option. And now all of a sudden when it came now from June, when he started to birth this message in me, the clothes are changing. But then the Father was going to show me that this is what's coming out of the land of Israel. Because now, at the time of Sukkot, we got invited. Well, we went to go see the new show. Now, they've always had the Jerusalem show at the David Citadel. It's a show that they put on the rocks of the David Citadel, beautiful. And now they have a new show that they've birthed now that's called the Life of David. So it's the whole life of David. So I got all excited to go and see this new show because, I mean, every year I've been seeing the same one for I don't know how many years. And now finally we are excited we're going to go see a new show. So we get there to go see the new show. And as I'm sitting there, the Father is about to open my eyes spiritually. So I am going to look at a show, but I'm not looking at a show. I'm going to look at what's being birthed in the spirit realm, coming out of Jerusalem, coming out of the citadel This is what's going to be shown. So the first thing that happens, here is David as a little boy, and David is going to go stand before Goliath, and David goes and picks up stones, and these stones go in the air, and he catches it in the air, and he catches it. And how many stones did David pick up? Guess how many stones there were? 6. So in the play, in this whole play that they're busy showing, this movie that they're showing, instead of there being 5 stones, there is 6. There is 6 stones. Now, why 6? Why 6? 6 is the number of man. And you see, man still wants to be on the throne. And man still wants to be exalted. And you see, that 6th stone, let me tell you how the Father has revealed to me that 6. Because you see, 5 is the number of grace. But 5 is the number of the first 5 books of the Bible. That's the Torah. That's the foundation by which we stand. That's when he came and he picked up those 5 stones and he put it in his belt and he said, "You uncircumcised Philistine." Because when he picked up those 5 stones, he's picking up the 5 books of the Torah, understanding the foundation and the covenant that he had with the Father. And that's what that 5 books of the Bible stand for. The first 5 books of the Bible stands for the covenant that was given with the people. And he's picking that up, putting it in his belt, knowing, his little bag, knowing this is an uncircumcised Philistine. He doesn't have a covenant with the Father, but he does. He's got the 5 stones reminding him of the 5 books of the Torah. But now, in this play, in this movie, they picked up a 6th one. And then the Father says, "You see, my child, that's exactly what has happened in the day and age that we're living in. You see, the Jews have added a 6th book. They got the Talmud as opposed to the Torah. They have the Talmud, and they live according to the Talmud, and they put the things of the Talmud above the Torah of Yahuwah. And the rabbis will exalt the Talmud above the word of Yahuwah." That's the 6th book that comes with the Jews, because they don't just have the first 5 books of the Torah. You'll hear them speak about the Torah, but the Torah that they speak many times is not the Torah of the word, but it's the Torah of the Talmudic writings of the rabbis. That comes with the Zohar, that comes with everything else that is the Mishnah and the Zohar and all those other books that they will put above the word of Yahuwah. And then, don't underestimate the Christians. Because what have we done? Oh no, we've got our little we've got our little Philistine cart, that Philistine cart over there. Because we also have made our own religion. And we are no longer drinking from the foundation of those first 5 books of the Torah. No, we don't want those first 5 books of the Torah. We have added on our own religion and said, no, we have now been done away from everything. We don't need any foundation. We don't need the foundation. We've birthed our own golden calf. Golden calf Christianity. That is what we have done. So we do have a 6th book, which is not of the foundation. And today, by the grace of Yahuwah, for those of you that do not understand it, you will understand clearly that when you walk through this whole Mishkan, everything is about Yeshua, but everything is about the foundation that was given you from the beginning. And Yeshua came to fulfill. He didn't come to do away with anything. He came to enhance. He came to fill up that which was already there from the beginning. He didn't come to do anything. He didn't come to do away with anything. The only thing he did away with was the punishment of the sin that you will experience, that you are supposed to receive. Because if you're not keeping that covenant, you are supposed to die. But he came and spared you from the punishment of that death. That's what you will understand clearly today. And so when the Father showed me that, I said, Father, what the heck? So that started with that. Then it shows David. A little bit further, shows David. David grows up. David stands before Goliath. David kills Goliath. And then it shows David carrying the ark. And guess what? That was the only picture that they showed. They never showed that. A whole play about David. And what do they show? David dancing in front of the ox, the cart with the ox, and the Levites dancing in front there, carrying the ark on the ox wagon, and it never shows David carrying it with the ark on the shoulders of the Levites. And that's coming out of Jerusalem. And I said, you see, Father, because of our 6th stone that we've picked up, We no longer have this pattern. We have that pattern. And that's the pattern that we're bringing forth into the world right now. So, coming out of Jerusalem about the life of David is not the pure David that has been set apart for the Father, that is carrying this ark on the shoulders of the priests, which is the pattern in which the Father gave, but it's showing a sixth stone that has been picked up, because we will have an extra religion, and we will do it by the strength of man, because 6 is the number of man, and we are going to be able to carry this ark on an ox wagon, because we'll do it our way. We have birthed our religion, and we are going to carry his presence in our way. And that is when I stood there and I said, Father, have mercy. Because what have we done? Because this is what we have birthed, you understand? This is what we have birthed. We have birthed a religion that is carrying the Father's presence in the way it was never meant to be carried. And now, he's looking for Levitical priests. We're not going to be Levitical priests, but we're going to be priests in the order of Melchizedek. Because who is our high priest now? Yeshua Mashiach. And we are now to become that holy, set apart bride. Oh, we all want to be the bride. Oh, for sure we all want to be the bride. It takes a price to be the bride. And you will understand by the time we're going to get to this, you are going to understand clearly what it truly means to be the bride. Because we have to understand the pattern. Because if you do not understand the pattern, then how are you going to be able to carry his ark, which is on the shoulders? It's light. It's not a heavy burden. It's not a heavy burden. He says, my yoke is light. My yoke is easy. It's going to be on your shoulders. All the weight is on these shoulders. There's no strain on you. And I will put my glory on your shoulders. And you will carry my presence. And they will see me through you. And you will be able to be the light that needs to shine to a world that needs to see him. But we've got to get the pattern right. Because if we don't get the pattern right, what are we going to do? But you see, he says, behold, I do a new thing. Can you not perceive it? Do you not understand? I will make rivers in the desert, flow in the desert where there seems to be no way. I'm not going to go there now. But we're going to do it. As we finish off, we're going to finish off with those scriptures. So, we need to understand that we've got to look at 1 Samuel 2 verse 35. Go back, make a note of 1 Samuel 2 verse 35 that says, and I shall raise up for myself a trustworthy priest who does according to what is in my heart and in my being. And I shall build him a steadfast house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever. So he is going to raise himself a faithful priest. A priest that even when David messed up, and even, David messed up there. But David, for 3 months, you see, why 3 months? Because on the 3rd day, you see, 3 is very significant. When you see 3 in the Bible, take note. Be it 3 months, be it 3 days. 3 is very significant because 3 is the 3rd day. After 3 months, he didn't have 3 days to sit because he needed time to read through the Torah. It wasn't going to be done in 3 days. But over 3 months, he read his Torah. And having sat down and went as a king, he was taught to be able to know the instructions of the Torah. Because a king was to be able to know the ways of Torah. To make his ways courageous before him. That was already what was given to Joshua. And David went back and seeked the Father, and went back and seeked the pattern of the Father. And as David went back and seeked the Father, on the 3rd day, on the 3rd month, a resurrection came of the true pattern of how he was supposed to carry the Father's presence. And so you see, everything about the fallen tent of David has everything to do with the restoration of the pattern that was given from the beginning. And so if we look at, let's see, Acts Let's go to Acts. Now we're going to start building on the pattern of understanding what is this tabernacle that the Father wants to be able to birth. How are we doing for time, Elsie? Half an hour. Okay. So let's go look at Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15, verses 16 to 17. And we start in verse 15. And the word of the prophets agree with this, as it has been written. After this I shall return and rebuild the booth, the tent, the Mishkan of David, which has fallen down. And I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up. So that the remnant of mankind, listen carefully, so that the remnant of mankind shall seek Yahuwah, even all the nations on whom my name has been called, says Yahuwah, who is doing all of this. So how important is the restoration of the Father's name? On whom my name has been called, says Yahuwah. Who is doing this? Who has made this known from of old? Now, let's go to Amos chapter 9, because that comes from Amos chapter 9. And that's why I really like this scripture's Bible, because where the scripture is there, it bolds it, and then it shows you where it comes from in the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant. So in the books of the prophets, we go to Amos. Hosea, John, Amos chapter 9. And so this wasn't something new that had been spoken in the renewed covenant. Remember, the renewed covenant is always bringing you what was in the old covenant, and then he brings that from the prophets, and everything needs to line up together. So let's read from verses 7. And he says, are you not like the people of Cush? To me, O children of Israel, declares Yahuwah. Did I not bring up Israel from the land of Mitzrayim and from the Philistines, from Kiftar and from Aram, from Kir? Now listen. Look, the eyes of the master are on the sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Yahuwah. So this is future things that are coming. This is future declarations that is coming, that is spoken of in the book of Amos, because remember, the prophets speak things that are still to come. Now he says, for look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations as one sifts with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. So, what you need to understand is that the house of Israel, the house of Judah and the house of Israel was split by two houses. David was basically, he wasn't the last king. David was the last king that ran the house of David, the house of Israel and the house of Judah as a house with a righteous king, and keeping them in the ways of Torah. But after his son Rehoboam came about, and the father gave he spoke over Jeroboam and said, I am going to split the house, and I'm going to give you 10 of the tribes. And the prophet rent his garments, and 10 of the tribes were given to Jeroboam. And then Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, because it was David, did what was according to the father's heart. But what happened to Solomon? Did Solomon do that? No. Because what did Solomon do? There was two things that Solomon did wrong. Solomon never had a prophet that spoke into his life like David did. David always had a prophet speaking into his life. Solomon had no prophet. Why? Because Solomon was given all the wisdom. Why would he need a prophet to speak into his life when he has all the wisdom that comes from the Father? So he never had a prophet speaking to his life. And Solomon, the second mistake that Solomon made is that according to I think it's in Deuteronomy 17. You can have a look at that, but just make a note of it. That a king is told to read through the Torah. And in that time, the king is actually told not to acquire many wives and not to acquire wealth. Did Solomon adhere by that? No. Because Solomon was a man that acquired many wives. He went astray in many things. Here. Yeah, if you read, I'll read it to you quickly as I went there. Deuteronomy chapter 17. And you shall certainly set a sovereign over you, whom Yahuwah your Lord shall choose. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase in horses for himself, nor increase in the people to return to Mitzrayim to increase horses, for Yahuwah has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. So both these things, both these commands of the Torah, Solomon violated. Solomon increased in wealth, and then Solomon increased in wives, and exactly what it said, do not increase in wives so that they do not turn your heart away from the Father. And this is exactly what Solomon did. Solomon increased in wives, and because of that, turned his heart away from the Father. And it shall be that when you sit on the throne of his reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of the Torah in a book, from the one before the priests and the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahuwah. So you see why there's no fear of Yahuwah? Because where's the Torah before our face? As a leader, he was told to be able to know who Yahuwah is by reading the books of the Torah. But because Solomon did not read the books of the Torah, because he had all this wisdom, he didn't know how to fear Yahuwah. And then he went and chased after those wives and allowed them to build their Asheroth and allowed them to serve their gods on the high places. And Solomon defiled the temple of the Father completely, and the kingdom. And the kingdom was stripped from him. Not from him, because he was still king over the 12 tribes, but when Jeroboam, that came from his loins, Jeroboam then put up the temple taxes. He listened to the elders, put up the temple taxes. A king is not to acquire wealth for himself. Why did he have to put up the temple taxes when the temple was already built? And he started crippling the people. And the people came and said, why are you doing this? And then the father stripped the kingdom from Rehoboam, and he gave it to Jeroboam 12 tribes. But Jeroboam became very wicked, and Jeroboam took them up north. And Jeroboam built a temple for him in Beit El, and then built another temple for him in Taldan. And Jeroboam started to serve after other mighty ones. He started to serve after other gods, and brought the people into idolatry, and brought them further and further away from the Father. And then from there, listen carefully, the house of Israel and the house of Judah has been split. There's never been one house since then. But you will understand when I share with you the testimony tomorrow of the prophetic work that the Father has done from the time of Yom Teruah and from Sukkot, that everything of what the Father is doing now is bringing the two houses to become one house. Because you see, the house of Israel, we are those of the house of Israel. Judah are the ones that return to the land, because Judah are the ones that have been faithful to keeping the Torah. And therefore, because of the lineage of David, Father promised that there would always be a leader to sit in the house. And that is why today, Judah is in the land of Israel. But Israel, we are of Israel that has been dispersed into the nations, that's now been grafted in, according to Romans 11. You are grafted into that house. You are not a branch sapping of your own. You are a branch that has been grafted in, and you are of that house. And the Father is now bringing the restoration of that house. And that's what we will speak about tomorrow when I start to share with you the prophetic things of the things that the Father has been doing. And I'm really going to take you deeper, because you see, on Sunday I only read a little bit, but this time I'm going to go further, and I'm going to finish what we did on the Beatitudes, and what the Father did when he said, I'm going to bring my glory. Because this is in a different group, and Father's going to do a new thing, and Father's doing a different thing. And so we look at Amos 9, where he's turning around and he's saying the same thing that he said when he spoke in Acts. Now I lost my place. So he says, for look, I'm commanding, and I shall sift. So that's why he sifted us throughout the nations. And now he's sifting. He's bringing us to our threshing floor. And he's bringing us to the end of ourselves, so that he can raise up his holy priesthood now. And he says, and all the sinners of my people are going to die by the sword. Those who are saying, evil does not overtake us nor meet us. So you must understand there is a people that he's going to take out now. And in that day, here we go, and in that day, I shall raise up the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall repair its bridges, and raise up its ruins, and I shall build it as in the days of old, that they possess the remnant of Edom. Now, Edom is actually Adam, and all the nations on whom my name is called, declares Yahuwah, who does this. So once again, on all those whom the Father's name is called upon. Once again, the significance of Abba's name. So we're going to just quickly, before we finish, I'm going to run through with you, just quickly, then we can go for lunch, about the character of David. Because understand, how do we come into this tabernacle of David if we don't understand the character of David? So I'm just going to run through with you a little bit on the character of David. So in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, I'm not going to go read every scripture. It says, I have found a man that will do all that is in my heart. So there we see that the Father's going to raise up a man that's going to do everything that is according to his heart. So David did whatever Abba wanted him to do. He was obedient to ask Abba for help and to do as Abba said. Now, is that the way we are? Or do we first come and have our plan and then ask the Father to bless our plans? Because that's the way a lot of us work. We have a plan and then we ask the Father to bless our plan. No, we've got to lay our plans down and say, yeah, Abba, I give you all of this before you. And I ask you today, Father, show me, what is it that you have for me to do? There's many things that I sometimes think is the Father, but I still have to bring it before you. Still lay down. I mean, when he told me I'm going to Israel, and he told me in 2006 already that I was to go to Israel, and then he told me, then all I think about is Israel, what I want to do in Israel, and then in 2016 he says to me, it's an idol. I said, what do you mean it's an idol? He says, it's an idol. He says, Israel's an idol. I said, how can it be an idol? I said, well, you told me that this is where I've got to go. He says, it's all you think about. It's all you dream about. It's all you want. You just want Israel. Israel is an idol. Lay down. So I had to lay down Israel. I said, I can't believe it. He tells me I'm called to Israel. He tells me I'm going to go there. Then he tells me it's an idol. Because you know why? Every time I would go to Israel and I would come back, I wouldn't even want to leave my house. I wouldn't even want to go to the mall. I wouldn't go anywhere. I would sit like a little worm in my house and I would just sit and want to cry because I don't want to be in this land. I want to be in the land of Israel. Then Brenda started pitching up in my house and she's telling me, you need to teach me. You're the one who did all of this. Now you better be teaching this. I said, I've got nothing to teach. Nothing. And she wouldn't take no for an answer. She said, I used to go to Bible school every single Tuesday. Now I'm coming to your house. You're going to teach me. And I thought, what is she doing? Because you see, I wasn't in that frame of mind. I had nothing to teach anybody. All I wanted to do was be in Israel. And when I'm in Israel, I'll finally arrive. Not before then. But that was not what Abba was going to do. He had to take me out of my little comfort zone. And then I had to lay Israel down. And for the first time, when I finally lay Israel down, and I was able to come back from Israel, and man, now I finally found a fellowship I'm happy with. I found people that I can really like call a family, and I'm so happy now. And now he tells my house and says it's time to go. And I think, well, now what the heck? Because that's how he works, you see. The very thing that you're holding the most dearest in your hand is the very thing that he's telling you lay down. And when you finally lay it down, at the appointed time, he picks it up again. Even better than what it was before. And so, here we see that he was a man that was after the Father's heart and do everything. We learn much from David's character. In the book of Psalms, David has successes and he has failures, pretty much like us. He would complain, Oh, I know that very well. I started complaining. Oh man, can I complain? But always end up with praising Abba, even in his difficulties. How many Psalms do you read? When David starts that Psalm, he starts complaining with his enemies. But then he ends by praising the Father and raising him up and glorifying him and raising him up to where he needs to be. He had a deep desire to follow Yah's will and to do everything Yah wanted. He was far from perfect, but truly loved Abba Father. And that's what we need to be. So we see a man of great faith. We see this as a shepherd boy when he's going to face Goliath. We see that as a little boy, he had already been, as a young man, he'd been brought up in studying the word, in studying that Torah, in knowing who Abba Yah was in his life. And then when he says, but he slayed the lion, he didn't say, I slayed the lion. Did he say, I slayed the lion? He said, he slayed the lion. He slayed the bear. Who are you, you uncircumcised Philistine? If he gave me the power to slay the lion, if he gave me the power to slay the bear, then who are you, uncircumcised Philistine, standing before me this day? He had the faith in the Father whom he served. He had absolute faith in him. He was fully aware of Abba, that Abba was in control. And he totally trusted and surrendered to Abba Father. David knew from young the Father's ways. David loved Abba's Torah. We're going to read that. And his faith pleased Abba. And he rewarded him for his faithfulness. Because he had Yah's favor everywhere he went. He had his favor. So if we look at, I just quickly just go to Psalm 119, because I always say to people, they always say to me, sure, did you have to choose the longest psalm in the Bible? I say, if you really want to know why David is a man after the Father's heart, read Psalm 119. If you read Psalm, meditate, take time out every day and read just a little section of Psalm 119. By the time you get to the end of Psalm 119, you will understand clearly why the Father called David a man after his heart. So if we start just in the beginning, look at what he says. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of Yahuwah. So what is going to make you perfect in the way? When you walk in the Torah of Yahuwah, then you will be made perfect in the way. Blessed are those who observe his witness, who seek him with all the heart. Yes, they shall do no unrighteousness. We will come to understand what righteousness is. Let's look at verses 12. It says, from verse 11, I have treasured your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Yahuwah. Teach me your laws. So David wanted to know the Father's laws. With my lips I have recounted all the right rulings of your mouth. I rejoice in the way of your witness. All over are riches. I meditate on your orders and regard your ways. I delight myself in your laws, and I do not forget your word. But then we say that this law has been done away with. It's not necessary. It's no longer needed. It's the Old Testament. It's old. It's all been done away with. But we are restoring the fallen tent of David. And everything about restoring the fallen tent of David is restoring the heart and the passion of David, which was a man that loved the ways of the Torah of Yahuwah. Let's look at verse 27. So he says again, verse 26, just above, teach me your laws. Make me understand the ways of your orders, that I might meditate on your wonders. Look what he says in verses 29 to 30. Remove from me the way of falsehood, and favor me with your Torah. I have chosen the way of truth. Your right rulings I have held level. I have clung to your witnesses, O Yahuwah. Do not put me to shame. I run the way of your commands, for you enlarge my heart. Teach me, O Yahuwah, the ways of your laws, and I observe it to the end. Make me understand that I might observe your Torah and make it guard it with my heart. Make me walk in the paths of your commands, for I have delighted in it. Incline my ear to your witnesses and not to my own gain. Turn away my eyes from looking at falsehood. Do you see? Now do you understand why David was a man after the Father's heart? Man, who can pray something like this and not be chasing after Abba's ways? He was passionate. And he was passionate about Abba's Torah. And if your Bible doesn't say Torah, then get yourself another Bible. No, serious. Because all it's going to tell you is law, law. And when you think law, you think, law. It's not law. It's Torah, which is instructions. Instructions for holy living. Imagine that. I give you my instructions on how to live holy before me. But now they put the stigma on this word law. And the minute we look law, we are such rebellious children that when there's a law put down, we don't want to keep it. That's just the way it is. So it says now, David was absolutely loved Abba's Torah, his instructions. David, more than half the Psalms was written by David, and he repeatedly mentions how much he loves Yah's perfect instructions, his laws, his commands. He meditated on Abba's commands. His Torah he gave was right rulings that he could walk righteously before him, that we see in Deuteronomy 17 verses 14 to 20, which is what I read, how a king is able to meditate on the word of the Father in order to work righteous before him. So if he reigns as a king, imagine, how is he going to reign as a king and walk righteous before the Father if he doesn't know the righteous way the Father wants the people to live? Because as him being the king, if he's reading that Torah and putting it into practice, then the people will be blessed. And he will be blessed because they will be doing what's right before the eyes of the Father. And their enemy will not destroy them. Is it not so? Then we see that he was a man that was praised by the Father and did not sit in the council of mockers, not even the fellowship of sinners. He hated what Abba hated, and he loved what Abba loves. And he loved Abba's presence. And we see that in Psalm 26. So we are in Psalms already. You can quickly turn there to Psalm 26. He says, rule me rightly, O Yahuwah, from verse 1. Rule me rightly, O Yahuwah, for I have walked in my integrity, and I have trusted in Yahuwah without wavering. He says, examine me, O Yahuwah, and prove me. Try my kidneys and my heart, for your loving commitment is before my eyes. And I have walked in your truth, and I have not sat with men of falsehood. Now, how many times do we sit with those people that will constantly walk in the ways of the world, and they are our best friends, and they are the people that we will desire fellowship with? These are not the people that we are to desire fellowship with. Yeshua didn't go and sit with them to be able to just be having a nice, jolly time with them. No, he came to show them the right way. So if you're going to be with those friends, it's because the Father has put you there for you to be the light, to be able to speak the truth into those people's lives. Because if you are acting like them and behaving like them and doing the things that they do, then you've got no reason to be there. Because it says a little leaven will leaven the whole bunch. So don't think your holiness is going to rub off on them. Their destructive ways is going to rub off on you. And it's just a matter of time. You're going to act like they do. You're going to speak like they do. And you will do the things that they do. Because your holy way is not going to rub off on them. But their wicked way will rub off on you. And that's the thing that we need to understand. Because sometimes we think, well, we're going to be with them and we're going to rub off on them. And then we start to see that our ways start to fall. That's why we call to a set-apart walk. And yes, if he's going to bring you into those places, it's because you are called to be the light. Understand, I know you work in the world. And I know when you walk into that office, you better understand that you are his ambassador that's walking into that office. That the day that you walk into that office, the kingdom of Yahuwah has walked into the office with you. And where you stand, you are his ambassador. And this is the thing that we need to understand. We are those ambassadors on this earth now. So he says, I do not sit with the wrong. I wash my hands in innocence, and I walk around your slaughter place, O Yahuwah. So there we see, he doesn't sit with the wrong. And then we see he desires the Father's presence. Look and see Psalm 27. What does he say? One matter I ask of Yahuwah, this I seek, to dwell in the house of Yahuwah all the days of my life, to see the pleasantness of Yahuwah, and to inquire of his hekel, of his tent, of his temple. For in the day of evil, he hides me in the booth. In the covering of his tent, he hides me. So that is what you're going to understand by the end of this weekend, that when we get to this place of this ark, we're going to hide under the shadow of the wing of the cherubim, of those cherubim angels, that we will be protected by him. The ark of his presence that's going to protect us from the pestilence and the destruction that's coming upon this earth right now by this coronavirus. Right now as we speak. Tomorrow I will share with you a little bit more about that, because the things that the Father's now opened up to me. The people there's more than 1 million people already infected. More than 50,000 people have already been, the cremation cannot happen fast enough. And they're cremating the body so quickly so that the people do not know how many people are actually dying. And this virus is airborne. It's airborne. How many things come from China? I shudder to even think, Abba, my Father. We better be dwelling there. That's the only place you're going to be protected. You ain't going to be protected anywhere else. And for those that are not going to come there, destruction is coming their way. And so we see 5 minutes, okay. And so we see David was also a man that sinned. So praise the Father, there's room for all of us. First and foremost for me, because I understand what it means to be really sinful. And you know what? We all sin. And we all fall short of the glory of Abba Yahuwah. And even David was that kind of man. You see, David never sinned in the time of when he was just a humble shepherd boy. Where did David's greatest sin come from? When he became king. You see, this is the thing. When we are still in that humble place, it's easy for us to be broken and humble before the Father. When he starts to elate you, when he starts to raise you up, that's where the danger comes. Because here's the king, and he knows as the king, he was supposed to have been out at the battlefield. He was supposed to have been out with the kings on the battlefield with his men that were fighting in the battlefield. But he decided, I am the king, I don't need to go on to the battlefield. Today, I'm going to stay at home, and I'm going to send all my men to battle. And so the women all think that the men are out at battle. So guess what? The women are not just bathing the way we understand bathing. They're smearing the oil on. And they are having a wonderful, girly time. They could have girly time. We love to be smeared with oil, don't we? Oh, we love to have girly time. And they were enjoying their girly time. And David was supposed to have been out on the battlefield. Now he sits there and he's looking down at one very beautiful woman, Bathsheba, as she is sitting there, bathing herself with oil. And the more he's looking, the more he's desiring. Because you see, where does it start? It doesn't start, the sin doesn't start in the act. The sin starts with the thought. Because we are going to deal with the mind, with the will, with the emotions. The sin starts with the way you look at something lustfully and you desire that thing. And these days, oh my Father, the pornography that is out there is insane. A man, I don't know, like, from when my boys were small, I actually just wanted to pluck their eyes. Because the way these little girls dress, they're already so provocative in the way they dress. From the time that they're small, with these little short little shorts and these short little tops, and they walk around. And then these boys are all lust wherever they go. It's just lust. And who makes them stumble? We do. We, as the young ladies. Oh, we're going to get into that. Give me the grace, Abba. Because at the end of the day, we have created those little girls to become these lustful little figures that the men can lust after. So you cannot drive past the road without a big billboard. You cannot look at anything on your computer. Elsie had to buy a specific thing to block on her computer. This ads that kept coming up of pornographic things. I said, our virgin eyes. We don't want to look upon filth. But now, we will watch a movie and the whole lustful scene takes place in front of you and it's okay for you to watch that. We have to stop this destruction that we have been opened ourselves up to. Because it is a lot of rubbish. And you see, what did Joshua come to do? You see, understand, where did David start? Where did the sin of David start? The sin of David didn't start with the fact that he just decided that he was going to go and have Bathsheba. Bathsheba didn't start with that. He looked upon her lustfully, desired something that he was not allowed to have because she was not his wife. And then what does he do? Oh, he even goes and commits murder. First he sleeps with her, then tries to get her to sleep with her husband because now he feels guilty about that sin that he's just committed of adultery. And then when her husband is such a righteous man and honors the king to such a degree, he says, how do I sleep with my wife when my men are on the battlefield? So no problem, he just makes like a phone call. That's not a phone call, but just makes a little order and says, make sure you put Uriah on the front of the battlefield so that he can be killed. And then what does he do? Take his wife. So when we look at Joshua fulfilling the Torah in Matthew chapter 5, from verses 17, the very scripture that everybody wants to be able to bring against me, let's look carefully. Let's look quickly, we're going to go there. Matthew chapter 5, because then I can just wrap this up and then we can finish. Matthew chapter 5, because I need you to understand, because a lot of people say Joshua came to fulfill the law, which means he came to do away with the law. But we are going to look quickly what it says here. Do not think that I come to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I do not come to destroy, but to complete. Now that word to complete means to uphold, to establish, which means I come to enhance, which means if the cup is half empty, like this, what I do is the Torah means I come to fill it up. So it's half empty. Now, by me bringing the Torah, I come to fill it up. I didn't come to do away with it. I come to top it up. And now I'm going to show you how Joshua comes to top up this Torah. So understand something. He turns around and he says, I didn't come to do away. I came to fulfill, which means, for truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one yud or one tittle shall by any means pass away from the Torah until all is done. I ask you today, is heaven and earth still in place? Has it passed away? So neither has Torah been done away with at all. And then he says, whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men to do so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. My goodness, there's many people that are least today. Because that is what the church is telling us to do. The church is telling us that we are to do away with the Torah. We are not to even uphold the Torah or keep the Torah. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reigns of the heavens. So you see, whoever's telling you to keep it and uphold it is going to be called great in the reign of heaven. So what I say is, it all depends who you want to be. If you want to do away with everything, that's fine by the Father. You can just be outside. It's up to you who you want to be. He says, for I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. Why? Because you see, those scribes, don't be too quick to look at those Jews and judge them. Because the things that they do is much more than what you do. Because they still at least keep those feasts. They still at least try and adhere to that Shabbat. They at least still try and walk in the ways of the Father, which we're not even doing at all. So our righteousness must exceed theirs. So let's not forget that when it comes to them at least keeping the Torah, they are at least still trying to keep the Torah, even though they've added many things to it that they should not add. I mean, hello. You can't switch off a light on the Shabbat, and you can't even tear your toilet pipe on the Shabbat. You've got to have tissues. Hello. That's not the things that the Father told us is of the Torah. It's for us to be able to keep the things that He's told us to keep. That's the word that He's told us to keep. Now look what He says here. You have heard it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone looking at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So do you see how Joshua comes to up the Torah? He's filling it up now. He's saying before, if you committed the adultery, you were then an adulteress. Now I'm saying to you, if you so much as look at that woman, already to lust with her in your mind, you've already committed the adultery. Please don't come and think that that man is only committing adultery with his wife when that wife, now he sleeps with another woman. The fact that he's watching all those pornographic things on his phone or on his computer or whatever, he is violating his bed and he's violating his marriage by being able to look at those pornographic things. Because he has already committed adultery. Not by the sin that he committed. Because you see, that's what David did. So what does the father do? Ups the stake. Joshua comes and ups the stake. And he says, now you all adulterers. Because now we all have done adultery. Somewhere in our lives we've lusted after something in our heart. Be it a man, be it a woman, be it whatever. Now we have all become adulterers. He says, if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. Throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehenna. So do you see, what was the father doing? He knew where David stumbled. David stumbled by what he saw. And from there, committed adultery. And from the adultery, committed murder. How did it start when he turns around and he says, if you so much as hate your brother in your heart, you've already committed murder? Why? Where was the first sin that started in the Bible? What was the very first sin, the very first murder that started in the Bible? What did it start with? A jealousy in the heart. When Cain became jealous of Abel, what did he do? Because of the jealousy in his heart, he killed his brother. And so where did it start? The jealousy in the heart. So we murder each other with the jealousy that comes up in our hearts, as opposed to upholding and loving one another. We're jealous of one another, then we destroy them with our mouths. Okay. So in Psalm 51, make a note of Psalm 51, you see David becoming very repentant for everything that he did, and for the fact that he said, take not your spirit from me. And then the fourth thing, David is a powerful leader and an intercessor. He would intercede and seek Abba for his people. Was even willing to receive Abba's judgment to spare the people. He took the role of a priest, not only a king. You see, that's the difference with David. David was not only just a king, he took on a priestly role. David was able to offer a sacrifice, because if you go make a note, you can go read it in your own time. 1 Chronicles 21 verses 1 to 24 is a very interesting scripture, because it's the only scripture that I've really seen in the Old Covenant where an evil spirit, where Hasatan is being mentioned by name. Satan came upon David. Hasatan comes upon David, and he does an evil thing. And what does he do? He starts to count the census. And he wants to count the people in his camp. And Joab, his right-hand man, says, this is not a good thing. And he gets a little bit shirty with him, and he says, you will count them. And he puts his authority over him. And then, what happens? Eventually, the father comes up against David, and he gives him three options, and he says, you're either going to have for 3 years famine in the land, where you're going to have a famine for 3 years. You either for 3 months going to come into the hands of your enemy, or you either going to for 3 days come under the judgment of the father. And David says, I do not want to be given into my enemy's hands. And therefore, I will allow the Father's judgment to come upon me. And in one day, the very first day, 70,000 men fall in the very first day by the hand of the Father. Understand, all because David does an evil thing by starting to count the people. He takes a census. Eventually, by the second day, when the plague is going to continue, David comes into intercession prayer. And he starts to intercede with the priests, and he comes before the Father, and he comes into sackcloth and ash, and he sits, and he repents before the Father, as the angel is going to go hit against Jerusalem, and the Father stops the angel, and the Father hears David's prayer, and the Father says, go and offer me an offering, and then I will spare you of the judgment that's going to come. So David takes the role of a priest and offers the Father the offering that he asked him. But David was a mighty intercessor that was willing to say, because what David said, come against me and my family, but please spare the people, just like Moses. Take my name, remove it from the book of life, but spare your people. That's the heart of a true intercessor. So we see that David is a man that follows the Father wholeheartedly. And so we are going to see now in the next session, we are going to see where our king is going to then, the restoration of the tabernacle of David is where understanding that David dies, but there is a king that's going to rise that will never die. And he's going to reign and rule. And he wants us to reign and rule with him. So in the next session, we will now start with our Mishkan. We will now start with our tabernacle and understanding everything about the tabernacle. So, Abba, my Father, thank you that as we go, and thank you for your word, and thank you for what you have done, and thank you for that you are doing in our midst. Thank you, Father, for the food that we are about to eat. May you truly bless the hands that made it. May it be nourishment to our bodies. Bless our bodies to your service. And thank you, Father, for the word that has gone forth, and that you will truly do a mighty work within us as we truly long to be able to be those that dwell in your presence, just like David did. In Yeshua's name, amen. Huh? Be back by 12:40.